Hey guys, I'm going to show you really quickly how to create a conditional drop-down list. So here I have a drop-down list, and what I want is when I select an option here, I want this bottom option to change and give me a different list. So if I select cats, give me a list of cats. If I select birds, give me a list of birds. So in order to do this, I have to define some named ranges. So for my first category, I define my named ranges as my categories here. I do it in another tab. So my categories are here, defined under this animals header. It's just to let me know what this named range is. In order to define a named range, you just select it and then type in the name box, animals, or you could do it in the formulas name manager and click new. I'll give an example. Click new, give it a name, example, and then select your range for that, and then it shows you the values if they had values there. I give it some values. And if I select example, it will select my name range. So you would also do that for your options. So whatever categories you have in your first drop-down list, whatever you want the conditionals to be, also define those as named ranges and give them the name range of the option that you're choosing. That's very important. So if we go back to the list here, I have my birds, and then so this is the animals named range, and this is the birds list right here. This is another named range, birds. So in order to get the list, I go to data validation on the data tab, click on list, and then for the first option, put in animals or the list, the name of the list that you want to be the categories for the conditional. And then for this section, you want to do the same thing, data validation list, but instead of giving it any specific name, it's going to be dynamic, so you're going to use an actual function. You're going to put equals indirect and then reference the selection with the main category. So what this does is that it looks at this selection, treats it as a named range, and then uses the indirect function to return the named range, so the list of items, and it treats it as like an array formula, array function. For this one, let me just go back. You have to put an equal sign when you define your main category. So it's like a function, you're treating it as a name range. So in that way, when you do that, you get your dynamic list. So let me show you with this example. So here's my example list. You don't need to give headers, I just use it for visuals. So I want another list. So when I choose by, I want a list here to be chosen. So I'll call this list by. So now let me go back to data validation. I need to make my example list something to be chosen. Oops. My list of examples. So example. So now I'm able to choose my examples. And now, since I already defined selections for by, I can choose any number. So if we go back here for a second, you can see that I have by, and then I have my type. And if I were to submit this, if this was a survey, for example, and my user filling this out, there's nothing to tell me that canary is wrong, that I shouldn't be selecting carry, that it's not something that's actually in my drop-down list. So in order to do that sort of check, so it's like a visual to your user, you can use conditional formatting. Just one more item though. So if I select something that doesn't have a drop down, like help, my list isn't going to work because I haven't defined anything. So I'd need to define, again, for every item that's up here in my list that I want a conditional for, make sure that it has a list, another named range with that exact name. So again, if I go back to what I was saying before, that there's no conditional here or no visual here to let me know that this is a incorrect response, you could do that with conditional formatting. So here I have the same list, and if I click dogs, I have some check here to let me know that, hey, this isn't even in the list for dogs, change it, because you have the list for dogs here. Same with cats. This isn't a cat, select the right cat. So you do this with conditional formatting, and I have some check cells here that actually help to do that. So these check cells use VLOOKUP, so it's saying look this value up in this named range, and if it's there, give me the name, which it does. If it's not there, for example, dogs, so it looks at looks inside the dogs named range right here using the indirect function, and it doesn't find syncs, so it gives me an error, and then have if error here give me 0, and it looks at 0, and then I have conditional formatting function applied to it. So let me just show you here. If I edit the rule, you can see that if this or if this one equals 0, h7 equals 0, that means that an error occurred. Then highlight this function, this cell as red. So this is the formula I have, and that formula and formatting is applied to G7. So that's one way you can have a check and a visual to show that if somebody selects something and the list doesn't change, or if they selected something inappropriately, then it gives an error. If somebody tries to type something in, data validation will work in. So if you go back up here to data validation, you can click these check boxes to ensure that they can't type anything in. So if I uncheck that and put something like Bob, get an error. Whoops. And then if I type, so ignore this, and alert messages and things like that. If I uncheck all that stuff and then type in Bob, I'm gonna, get an error because I applied the conditional formatting. But if those things weren't checked in, your user wouldn't really know unless you have those things set up in your conditional formatting. So you go to error alert, give it an error stop. You can write a message as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so that's all I have. I hope that helps, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.